to the Yvonne Candy Show. Motivational, inspirational, and just plain fun. Where celebrities check in and you can check out what's fresh in entertainment, business, health, finance, and more. It's all about your lifestyle. Here's your host, Yvonne Candy.
Hi, everybody. If you're here on the East Coast with me, you are having a beautiful day. It is nice outside. Spring is almost here. But you know what I find so strange? In most parts of the country, the weather is basically the same. I don't know what happened. My daughter lives in Las Vegas, and she says that her weather is about the same as ours. I have a son live in Phoenix, and he said his weather is about the same as ours. I don't know what's going on, but she told me a few weeks ago she was so cold it was about 35 degrees, and it was snowing. Can you imagine that? Snowing in Las Vegas? So maybe we need to pay a little bit more attention to that global warming. Well, let's talk about next week's guest. We have Renee Petrone, owner of Party Host. Renee is known as the Queen of the Scene and is a regular on Fox Network, giving tips and advice on anything from weddings to corporate events. So if you're planning an event of any kind, or maybe you just want some event planning tips or advice, you want to hear Renee Petrone. Now, our guest today is Christine Beckwith, a sought-after speaker, best-selling author, and entrepreneur. Christine has won numerous awards, including Most Elite Women in Mortgage from the MPA, which she is a three-time winner. Wow. For the public nominated and curated award. She also has been named Most Connected Mortgage Professional by National Mortgage Publications, NMP. Christine has been featured in and is on the cover of Mortgage Women's Magazine for the March-April edition, and she is now the monthly columnist for that publication. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with our guest right after this message.
If you're an investor, home buyer, or seller looking for a realtor that understands your needs, then look no further. An experienced realtor is at your fingertips to help you through the total process of buying and selling an investment property or your home. You need a knowledgeable realtor that knows the market and can even help with resources for financing, credit, and more. Call 215-459-5950 for an experienced realtor now. That's 215-459-5950.
You're listening to the Yvonne Candy Show, where it's all about your lifestyle.
And we're back with my guest, Christine Beckwith. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. Christine, you have a lot of accolades. You're a speaker, author, coach, and you've been in the mortgage industry for over 30 years. Tell us, what inspired you to take your career to these heights?
Yeah, looking back over the last 30 years, I think I just took the next steps that laid right in front of me really seriously. I wanted to master the next thing in front of me, and then the next, and the next, and the next. I just always had that drive.
Right, because some people are satisfied just being a loan officer, which you were.
Yeah, I got the bug for competition. I didn't really know until I got into this field that I had that competitive drive. I had always been athletic, so I think I knew I liked competing maybe subconsciously, but as I began to compete, and I had a lot of people tell me when I first entered sales in the mortgage industry, coming from a few years on the off side, that I shouldn't do it, that a lot of women didn't do it. And so I learned early on that I'm the type of person to rise to a challenge. And if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to try twice as hard.
Well, you're just a naturally competitive person.
Yep, I discovered that's true.
I was reading where you wanted to change the sales industry from a primarily male-dominated field.
Yeah.
Was that all a part of the plan?
No, I mean, I realized early on in my career that I was surrounded by men, and I'd always been a bit of a tomboy, so that really didn't distract me or deter me. I really, truly was just a person who loved what I did. And I caught that banking bug, and I, of course, wanted to help people with their American dream. I had grown up rather poor and really wanted to understand and help other people with home ownership. And so with all of that in mind, I kind of put blinders on to that fact for a long part of my career. And it wouldn't be until I began to get notoriety breaking some of the glass ceilings that I didn't intentionally mean to break in the earlier part of my career that I realized how rare leadership was for women in the banking industry. And as that notoriety came and I grew to even higher levels and I aged, I got a sense of responsibility to help other women enter our field. And so I was more comfortable talking about it and being that mentor. And today I'm way, way out. You know, I've written in my books about it. I speak on platforms about it. And certainly I am for women entering the banking industry, of course.
Well, I am also in the real estate industry, and I noticed that there is a lack of women. You don't
Yeah.
see as many. People may not believe this, but you don't see a lot of women realtors or brokers as much as you see men in the contracting business, as you're in the banking business. You
Yeah.
really don't see it. It's really amazing how we have a lack of women, and I'm glad that you're doing something like this and trying to help women, especially with your programs, which we're going to talk about, a little bit later. But I think that it's actually helping women to step up and move into the forefront of business, of corporate.
Yeah. I have to tell you that until I wrote my book, Wise Eyes, See Your Way to Success, which I had written 13 years ago for the most part, sitting on the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, having a summer off after the job I had had for over a decade. The company had closed during that mortgage implosion. And I just wrote. And I was in that place in my life where I wanted to write. And then I set it aside and I went to work for my last job, which I also had for 12 years. And I just picked it up a couple of years ago. And I submitted it to my hired editor. And she said, Christine, you're not answering to the number one question you have when you publicly speak, which is what is your position in the women's movement? And I said, are you crazy? I'm surrounded by men. I have 98% men working for me, men above me. I do not want to alienate myself. And she encouraged me to try to write like I was writing in a journal. She said, listen, this book needs to have a chapter in it of real, raw, authentic words in your voice about the difficult part of your career. You've written about all the highlights and your best-selling tips and your overcoming of obstacles, but you haven't given the reader the grit, which is what any good editor would say. And I said, well, listen, the grit, is going to isolate me. And she said, no, write it like you're writing in a diary and then send it to me. And I knew what she was doing. I wrote it that way. But I found myself crying, like I had a box of tissues.
Oh, wow.
And I literally wrote this chapter with, realizing I had these feelings all of the 30 years, and I had never said these things out loud or even allowed myself to, put them to pen and paper. The rest is history, because that is chapter 14 in my now Los Angeles American Book Festival 2018 sales winner. And it's out there for all the glory and all the readers to see what I really felt for 30 years in a male-dominated field. So Thank you for saying that I'm helping other women, because that liberated me and made me realize I'm not going to die if I say things out loud that maybe are hard for people to hear. And I'll just end on this thought. I don't consider myself a feminist. I consider myself a person for people. And because of that, of course, I would rise to fight against discrimination. I would rise to fight for pay equality. I would rise to fight for those causes that I deem there to be any form of discrimination. But in doing Real Advice to Women, I say to them, if you want to enter a race where mostly men are in, don't ask to play from the women's case. Step up to the plate and grab your iron and swing. And if you win, own it. And if you lose, own it. But just get in the race and don't be afraid of doing it.
I agree. But do you believe it, Christine, that we're even having this conversation in 2019? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of growth that has to occur.
Yes, it still is. It still is. You know, it hasn't really been that long ago. You know? It hasn't been that long ago since women received, rights. But I do believe in equality. I really do. But I just can't believe that we're having this conversation. And there is men that do support women, that do support the women's rights. There are men that do. You know, they're not everybody out there. It's not a hater.
Yeah, well, one of my columns, Women's Mortgage Magazine for 2019, is called Meet the Mentors, and MEN is capitalized. And what we're doing there is we're highlighting the men who have elevated women into upper executive level positions in the mortgage industry. The first guy that I interviewed was the mentor of Marsha Davies, COO of the MBA, founder and president of Empower, which is the largest women's banking community in the nation. And Dan Driscoll was a New York Daily Times reporter in the late 60s. So here I am, 2019, with amateur journalist skills, talking to this guy who, by the way, was the first reporter at the Amityville Horror Massacre in 1974, which became an Oscar-winning movie. And I'm interviewing him. And my questions for him were, what doors or what did you see in Marsha Davies to open the door to what is now the highest seated woman in the banking industry? And, as poignant of a man as he is, and a guy who opened doors long before it was popular and long before there was a spotlight, so he wasn't doing it for praise. He was genuinely doing it. He would tell you he did it because she was the best choice. And
That's
so
wonderful.
I'm highlighting men this year, every month, Women's Mortgage Magazine, a different man every month that has opened doors in our very minority field. And I think that's a really great, positive contribution to highlight that there are a lot of men that have really helped us evolve.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And there's a lot of men that still have that old-fashioned thought, which I believe was brought on by society, that men have to be the dominant, part of our species. And I don't understand that, but I guess it's because they're the strongest. But us women know that we are the smartest.
Yeah.
But anyway, I know I'm going to catch it. I know I'm going to catch it for that. But Christine, for our consumers out there, because I get a lot of questions about mortgage these days, especially after the fall around 2008 of the real estate industry. And a lot of the consumers are sort of confused. They knew what was out there back then. They knew back then what they could do and what they couldn't do. But now there's this question, matter of fact, I had somebody just ask me this today. What do I have to do? They say, what do I have to do to get a mortgage? What do I need? So Can you sort of briefly tell us what's changed?
Yeah.
Qualifications, programs. Tell us
So
about that.
if you can imagine a world where in 2004, national delinquency rate was right around 4%. So 4 out of 100 homeowners would go to default back then. And that was pretty much the standard, 4 to 7%. 7 was the highest, but 4 was the comfort zone. And in a short 2 or 3 years, that number rose above 40%, meaning 40 out of 100 people were defaulting on their mortgages. So investors were in a situation where they found themselves uncomfortable with not really knowing what was going to make default occur. Because a lot of those people, over 50% of the 42% that were defaulting, were people that had never defaulted before in the history of their mortgage. And so these were people that had second homes during the heyday and were letting them go to kind of, hang on, or had investment properties and were letting them go, or God forbid, through job loss and the decline of our economy, were losing their primary residence. But there were a percentage of that as well.
Wow.
So, of course, there's been a constriction of product guidelines. And without getting specific to any one product, I would tell you that we are in a wonderful place 10 years later where we are seeing some loosening of what became very, very strict guidelines.
Right.
There are more avenues now for people to buy homes, more flexibility in first-time home buying, and there's more renovation and construction programs for those folks trying to get into fixer-upper houses, or even for the homeowner that needs to refi and do house repairs and they haven't had equity to do it. Non-QM products, which is a new word, but basically the description of those are more alternative documentation type programs. It'll never return to the old days when we had the old no income, no asset programs for obvious reasons, but there is a loosening. So, I say if you haven't been qualified in years and there's some sort of financial activity you want to do with real estate, call your local loan officer and ask them to qualify you today, because what you may or may not have been able to do a couple of years ago could be completely different.
Yeah, I found that the consumer that has the credit scores maybe in the high 6s or the 700s are able to do a lot more, like the 80-20, for 100% financing, or, something like that, because back in the day, you used to could do that with much lower scores. And I think that's where we sort of wind up in trouble. Okay. Nowadays, in order to do that, first of all, the programs are very few. And the ones that we do have where you can be a lot more creative and you can get more bang for your bucks, maybe like the 100% financing, whatever, and the lower interest rates, you have to have a higher credit score. Have you found this also to be true?
Yeah, I mean, the FICO system, which is the credit scoring system today, uses algorithms based on dozens of factors, but mainly, keeping your credit payments and obligations obviously timely, also not messing your debt out, the history length of your credit, just to name a few things. And of course, all of those affect the over score, the outcome score. And the higher your credit score, obviously, the more flexibility you have in programs, because different investors have different credit score requirements. And so the higher up the band you go, the more choices you have. However, I will tell you that, America's average credit score has declined over the last decade. And so with that, there's very affordable and competitive programs in the lower FICO band. So again, I would just encourage home buyers or prospective buyers to, seek a local loan officer that can help you determine where you're at. If not now, they'll tell you what you need to do when. And certainly if you're in a good position, they're going to give you all your options.
Right. What I found that most people do is when they want to get a mortgage, they run straight to Credit Karma. And they don't know that Credit Karma is not FICO. FICO is the system that the banks use for a mortgage. It's Advantage. It's called an Advantage score. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think without naming name brands to the difference in what you get for free scores online, I would warn or educate rather that when you really want to know what your real credit score is and what lenders use, we use the middle score of 3 scores from 3 major bureaus. And that is what each of them are FICO scores from the 3 major bureaus. And they usually go with what they call the median score, the middle score. And so a lot of times the free credit score companies that offer you a free credit score are giving you one of the bureaus, but not all 3, because that's why getting a FICO-driven credit report, there's a cost to, because there's actually an agency that's gathering the 3 credit bureaus' information, culminating them, and coming up with, a proper FICO report. So I would just warn consumers to make sure they ask this question, and that is this a triple merged report?
Right.
If they ask that question and get a yes, they are getting a true read on their FICO scores.
I wanted to talk just a little bit about your 2020 Vision for Success coaching.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I own a coaching company that is for realtors, brokers, mortgage loan officers, and mortgage companies and managers. So really focused in the real estate finance sector of the world. I do have outside companies, a few companies that work with me, but basically I've wanted to be a coach. I've always migrated to leadership and mentoring. I've built a really robust platform that solves to a lot of industry problems. My forte is in creating organization out of chaos. And, in short, I basically offer a system where I come in and I consult, I examine an individual's business, a realtor's, a loan officer's individual business, or I'll examine a company's business. If you can imagine, for the last 21 years, I've been at a senior level of mortgage companies, and I've been in a position to help them forecast and help them arrive at sales business plans. And so I've developed training, and I've also seen what is lacking in that world for training. So I have this awesome training system, virtual training platform through Lightspeed. Lightspeed is the software used by Grant Cardone, owned by Bradley out of Las Vegas, Damon John, so some famous celebrity
my
coaches.
favorites. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I bought their system, and anyone that comes with me gets the ability to train and learn an MBA equivalent in sales acceleration for their business with business fundamental courses and sales skill courses. But you also get me and my team. We're a company that's fully staffed. You get, a Citibank feeling because there's an onboarding and orientation process. You are able to join mastermind classes. We have celebrity coaches come in, and then I'm there to consult in those businesses twice a month, every single month for the elite and limited folks that I take on. So you make an application through my website, and then you personally get a phone call from myself or one of my senior managers, and then we run from it there, and we really turn out really exceptional sales folks.
And those courses are for anyone who want to achieve their life goals. It's not just for salespeople, is it?
That's correct. I've worked with companies that are not, specifically doing sales, but doing operations or services. And yes, it will teach an entrepreneur everything they need to know about wrenching the towel dry towards success in their businesses. And it's not just philosophical. I'm a philosophical leader, but it's tactical matter, accounting terms and business terms. But it teaches it in a fun way. My classes are animated. You hear my voice narrating them, but you're seeing visuals, and it's just an easy way to learn.
Great. You do have another 2020 program, but it's a little bit different from the first one. You have something that's called Vision President and Master Coach program. That's more for companies. Can you just give us a little insight on that?
Yeah, so we have a pro series that's really for big companies, or even I shouldn't say big, for companies, period. So you could be a broker that has 25 realtors and you really want to put your whole team on a course. I'm going to come into your facility. I'm probably, physically going to sit down with the senior managers. I'm going to look at what your business plan is, and all of the people that are underneath this leadership are going to get the virtual sales training, but I'm going to direct the company as a consultant all year long collaboratively. Those owners will still run their businesses, but they'll be seeking second opinions through my experience of turning out profitable companies for the last 20 years. And I'm right there with you. And, I have to say that it's my passion. I take such pride in those type of consulting and partnerships. And I have a really good track record. And so, it's a great thing for a company to get, for sure.
Well, Christine, you have some marvelous books out, bestsellers, and we want you actually to give the web address for those books, because I just looked at the time and I wanted to go through them with everybody. But tell us where we can find your books, and we also need your website.
Sure. So my website's so easy. It's www.visionyoursuccess.net. So it's VISIONYOURSUCCESS.net. My two books, Clear Boundaries and Wise Eyes. Clear Boundaries is a best-selling safety book that was written because of two fallen colleagues, and is the culmination of a state-of-the-art safety guide. People have probably seen it on the internet. It's the one with the big red high heel. And we've been very fortunate to have it really go viral in the U.S. Because, so many people contributed. Apple has their security. NAR has their tips in there. We have endless stories from women and men that contributed. And then Wise Eyes is my sales book, and it's a personal story written about my start and overcoming a ton of obstacles on my journey in life to reach these unfathomable heights in the banking industry that no one would have thought a poor girl from New Hampshire could get to. So I hope it inspires people. You can buy both books on Amazon, and you can find both of them also on my website, and we have a click-in if you decide to purchase it.
Well, Christine, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you guys for joining us on another episode of the Yvonne Candy Show. Don't forget to visit us at Yvonne Candy Radio on Facebook and Yvonne Candy on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Okay, until next time, you know my motto, live the life you deserve.
Thanks for listening to the Yvonne Candy Show. Want to know more? Check out YvonneCandy.com.